To me, this is not just another nation. It is not just one of the family of nations. This is a nation with a great mission to perform for the benefit of liberty-loving people everywhere.
That we shall be as a city upon a hill.
These are the times that try men's souls. The summer soldier and the sunshine patriot will, in this crisis, shrink from the service of his country.
You've come to fight as three men. Three men you are. What will you do without freedom?
Proclaim liberty throughout all the land.
In one voice, we will not go quietly into the night. We will not vanish without a fight. You gotta fight for your right. Can you dig it?
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another edition of Real News on this morning time. It is Friday, August 21st at 9:01 in the morning. My name is Mr. Henry. Welcome back. We are at it yet again. If you're wondering why I'm looking over on this screen, it's because we do things a little last minute from time to time here on the Real News program. I'm trying to throw this episode up on the Minds.com as quickly as I can. Now, for y'all that don't know Minds, it's just another random social media site that's been out there, much similar to Parler, similar to ThinkSpot. ThinkSpot is a really cool one if you don't know. But realnewsradio.live, realnewsradio.live. That is the central landing page, the hub, if you will, of all real news related things. You can find some mugs out there. You can find some t-shirts. You can find some little graphics, some other stuff that we do. You can also find links to all the other affiliated sites. My name is Mr. Henry. David Shine Thompson sitting over there. We have a jam-packed show today, going over some Tennessee unemployment numbers, a bit of bad, a bit of good. We're going over one of the bigger stories that came out yesterday, some Steve Bannon fraud. And some people are trying to tie this to Trump, to the Trump administration. I get it, I guess, just because of association itself. To be fair, to be completely fair. To be fair, sir.
To be fair.
Everyone's playing that game right now. Everyone's playing the associative game, the association game of who you were seen with. Dude, just this last week, Bill Clinton was seen, had a picture that was leaked with getting a back massage from an individual that's now a Jeffrey Epstein accuser. And this has now been linked to the entirety of the Democrat Party.
To be fair,
sir. To be fair. So I guess Steve Brandon's fraud is now going to fall on top of Donald Trump's name somehow. I don't know, man. But it's the We Build the Wall thing. It was a crowdfunding site that was meant to build the wall, and they were just siphoning off hundreds of thousands or tens or millions of dollars. And then the other thing in the show notes you'll see here as far as the title today is not Donald Trump's acceptance speech. We're going to go over the acceptance speech for the Democrat National Committee to nominate not Donald Trump. And I know that's the most brilliant comedic take you've heard in a very long time. It's not.
Remember when Clint Eastwood gave that speech to that chair?
I do remember that, yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like that, except it's not a chair. It's not Donald Trump.
It's not Donald Trump.
It's still an exercise in pretend.
Honestly,
like we're pretending that Joe Biden can run for president.
I'm just thinking about this, and it's not the most brilliant analysis that's ever been given, but it really, the Democrat Party right now has kind of become, hey, just don't vote for the other guy. And that, I say that with all sincerity. I'm not exactly sure what Joe Biden might bring to the table or Kamala Harris might bring to the table as far as a Democrat ticket with what the Democrat Party would like to stand for, or at least the way the media narrative covers the Democrat Party right now, what they are openly espousing that they do stand for. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are not it. They're not. By any stretch of the imagination, they are just simply not representative where I thought the majority of the party was right now. So it seems like the majority of the party is having to fall back on just not Donald Trump. And I know we're getting way into analysis early on here, but hey, it's Real News. It's a Friday. Shine just brought this up right before the program, saying that he just posted this on Real News. He was just watching this. Tell me and Shine again. It was just like the Postmaster General. Is that his name? Is that the thing?
Yeah, it's the Postmaster General. He was doing a Senate hearing, answering questions about how he's not trying to throw the election, how he's just trying to run the post office, and how everything that has been reported is things that are decades and decades old. Like he talked about how the picking up of the pickup boxes is a program that's been going on for 50 years. For 50 years. They've been trying to make the pickup boxes more efficient, and it's only ramped up more and more and more over the years because the post office is becoming less and less financially viable. And the senators are being, the first thing I said to Grant, and he laughed, was Republicans must have got out ahead of this because the Democrats are being so reasonable. And maybe it's because it's the Senate, too, because that's got a, so there was a Republican chairman, can control the gavel. So if anybody got too crazy, it's not like the House. It's not like the circus that goes on in the House. But it was like everybody was just like, okay, so you swear you're not working for Donald Trump and trying to throw the election? He's like, yeah, I swear. I was picked by a bipartisan committee of the post office board, and Donald Trump just confirmed their decision. You all confirmed the post office board.
You all fund me, right? If you have a problem with funding, y'all are giving it to me.
He's like, I've only been on the job for 2 months. It's no conspiracy. And they're all like, we're really sorry. Yeah, we probably should fund the post office better. Thank you for your time. It was really great. I recommend y'all watch it. Not during Real News. Watch Real News, then watch it.
Yeah, that's right. Check out Real News and then go back. The reason why I brought that up from what Sean told me before is this is yet one more thing that I think it was an alternate narrative that the Democrat Party was trying to rely upon that was, again, sort of that not Donald Trump thing. Or at least it was it's not pro-Joe Biden, it's just anti-Trump,
This week was not, don't watch the DNC. Think about the post office. I think the whole thing was to draw attention away from the DNC because they knew that was going to be so bad. If this was bad, imagine what election night's going to be like.
I have a story down here, Sean, saying that there's a 22% drop in viewership from this same time last year for the DNC. A 22% drop, right? And again, I have some other show notes linked here in just a minute too. We'll get to this later on in the program, I'm sure. But Rose McGowan, somebody that was majorly involved in the whole #MeToo movement, she tweets out this the other day. She tweeted this out last night. You are the season of darkness, Joe Biden and DNC. You are the monsters. You are frauds. You are the lie. And I'm not here to advocate on behalf of Rose McGowan. If anybody knows who this actress was or anything, I'm not here to even agree with what she's saying. I'm only there later on in the show to bring up the responses to the tweet, because the responses to that tweet are just, yeah, but Trump is so bad. It's literally this cognitive dissonance that comes along with the frustration of the duopoly that we are stuck in right now. That, man, I just really don't like my guy, but I hate your guy. And everyone's sort of sitting around saying, well, I wonder what a third party option could possibly be. That's my wonder. But nevertheless, the point I'm making is I just don't think a strong motivating factor is to try and prove a negative. I just don't think you can motivate a massive amount of voters to turn out just to get rid of somebody. They want to have somebody to vote for, not something to vote against necessarily, right? Anyways, let's get into the local stories here. First local story you'll see coming. It says, please see below for our weekly unemployment numbers. Weekly claims did increase, but we continue to see a drop in continued claims. This is coming from Representative Jason Zachary out in East Tennessee way over there by y'all. And I just, there's not a lot of other local stories going on. There's a few, but this one in particular, I just wanted to focus on, for a couple different reasons here. You can see this graphic that you're pulling up. I'm sure you guys are looking at it the same way I am too. Let me look at those numbers. I actually wasn't. This is the first time in probably a month or two that I had actually looked at the unemployment numbers in comparison to what they were prior to some of these COVID shutdowns. I had no idea, and I feel terrible for saying this, Sean, but I had no idea it was this dramatic. This dramatic. I knew it was dramatic, but I didn't know we had jumped from 16,000 unemployment claims on March 21st to April 1st, 112,000. And then to May 9th, 325,000, I think was the peak there, another peak number. So from March 14th to May 9th, we went from 16,000 and change to 325,000 and change in unemployment numbers. Dude, honestly, I don't know why that I'm not sure why that gripped me so hard this morning. I think because, like I said, it's the first time I've seen it placed in context in a few months here.
Well, whenever you hear people talk about how good the economy was, it's always theoretical to us because billions and trillions and even hundreds of thousands are numbers our regular brains just aren't used to comprehending on a scale of narrative. Like, we can do it on a scientific scale, but it's not emotion. Like, we can understand tens of thousands, in comparison to a few thousand. And that should really put it in perspective of how great the economy was prior to COVID. In comparison, because it feels normal to you now, even though you can feel some symptoms of the economy not doing so well. You go to the store and there's stuff there that you need, but it ain't there. That's happened a few times over the past few months. You can see the weaknesses and the cracks. But everybody who was saying that good economy was all marketing, like everyone was just saying it was a good economy, well, it was really good. And I don't know if that means it's really bad now, Grant. I don't know if that's what it means, but it definitely means that there's a contrast, and this is a way where we can actually feel that contrast. You know what I mean? In these numbers.
Now, obviously, these numbers need to be taken into context with, if you're looking at it just as a raw scale, it needs to be taken into context with the total number of actual employed people still in Tennessee and what percentage that is of unemployment rate of what we're sitting at right now and so on and so forth. I understand the economics behind it. Really, my point of bringing this up this morning was just to draw a reference between what it was prior to the shutdown and where we're sitting at right now during the shutdown, right? People are struggling. That's really one of the reasons why I'm bringing this up right now in place of the greatest audience in the nation appreciation segment, like we normally do, is to kind of draw attention as much as I can to look, if y'all believe in power of prayer, if you believe in power of outreach, and you believe what we're doing right now with building this community, direct some of that attention this way if you can. People are struggling in this state right now. Across the nation, obviously we're struggling. But I do always appreciate what Shine says that, he considers himself a Knoxvillian first, a Tennessean second, and a United States citizen third. And obviously, the reason why I think he says that is to put it into context. Look, man, I'm a member of my community, my friends and family unit first. That's who I look out for first. Right? And Tennesseans are struggling right now. They are. Now, again, going forward, that 325,000 number on May 9th has slowly been dropping down. It has. So we're down to 204,000 right now. Now the new claims on a weekly basis did tick up slightly over the last week from 10,000 to 13,000, and they had been slowly dropping down as well. So the new claims did pick up slightly, but the overall continued claims are on a decline, which I suppose in some version of a future predictor or trajectory is good news. But again, compared to that previous number, the reason why I brought this up is more of a narrative creator than anything else, of just to draw attention to y'all. If you have someone that's struggling, if you have people that are trying to get small businesses open, if you're trying to maintain, if you're trying to think of innovative ways to stay alive, I know we don't have a huge reach on this program. It's larger than you might think. I promise you that much, right? We're across multiple different platforms, and Shine can tell you the numbers. It's larger than you might think, but bring those folks to our attention. We'll put them on the program. We've done it before. We did it with bowling alleys. We did it with electricians. We did it with, right? Bring it to our attention. We'll try and get the community to help out. Just want to draw attention. And one final weird thing I want to make a note on this as well is, people everywhere are struggling right now, right? And I think in the vein of some of these bailout programs that you're seeing going on recently, right? Of some of these state bailouts of unfunded pension liabilities. And I get it. There's a lot of conversation that you are going to hear, that you're starting to hear now. You're going to hear more about during the presidential elections coming up, of the need for government to tighten its belt as well. I just can't get my head around this notion of where government entities are claiming that it's okay for their people to suffer, but it's not okay for them to limit the size of their reach either. And I don't wish anybody losing a job. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is we're in a time period of belt tightening. We're in a time period where 200,000 plus people do not have jobs in this state. Even if we want to look in the metro area right now, I've heard a lot of people telling me when it comes to this property tax issue, one of the reasons why we need to raise property taxes so government can continue to grow, or at least maintain the size that it's currently at. And I look at some of these figures and these statistics and I think to myself, really? Just the lack of social awareness to make that type of statement is astounding to me. When the struggle is this real, to say in spite of that struggle, no, we just need to maintain our size. And then on the back end of that, to push yet another idea of to spend yet another $1.5 billion for a transit plan right now, it just doesn't sit well with me, right? So for a multitude of reasons, I wanted to bring this up currently. It's a little bit of national with the state bailouts that you're going to see, unfunded pension liabilities, a little bit local with the property tax, and it's much, much more local because I'm sure if we really want to reach out and touch the audience on this one and get their opinions, they probably know someone or know of someone that knows someone that is unemployed right now. That's one of these folks that is struggling.
Hey, let
Just
me
trying to
say
make things
too, Grant, I've talked to that electrician recently that we had on the show right after the shutdown happened. As we talked to retail owners and talked to a lawyer, we talked to a bowling alley owner, and we may continue that too. Like Grant said, like send us those people if you want us to talk to them and magnify what they're doing. But I want to say, supposedly, Tennessee is building like crazy right now. If you know anyone without a job, tell them to go find an entry-level trade job. Entry-level welding, plumbing, electrician, concrete work, road work. There's a lot of road work going on right now. Because I think the state and municipal governments in Tennessee, at least in Tennessee, maybe even the federal government, are taking the opportunity to, because there's less cars on the road. I don't know if you notice in Knoxville, they're working on every single bridge right now. They're working on like every single bridge. And I don't know if that's the case in the Nashville area or not, if they're working on the interstates, the roads. But what I'm saying is there's a lot of building going on right now. Credit is flowing like crazy. The bailout money is flowing like crazy. People are updating their buildings because they're closed. Commercial landowners are updating their buildings. Business, even lease owners are updating the what do you call it? The cosmetic stuff in their businesses. And I've had two former bosses call me and ask me if I want to do electrical work in the past week. On the side, like they're like, in some cases they're like, I'll pay you cash because I need people that bad. And I'm like, nah, man, I got a great job. I ain't trying to get out there and sweat and stuff. But like, if you don't have a job or know someone doesn't have a job, don't be intimidated about. And I mean this, like, this is like if your choices or your friends' choices are unemployment or something worse, right? Not having money, having to move or do all those things. Don't be intimidated about getting into trades. People are a lot nicer than you think. Don't be intimidated by blue-collar people. They're really nice. They want to teach people because there's not as many tradespeople as there should be. Yeah, and people want to train people. They don't care how old you are, how young you are, male, female, whatever. Don't be intimidated for any reason. Even if you're a young female, it doesn't matter. Go get into trades. It's not as dangerous as you think. The guys will be nice to you. They'll teach you things, and it's good money. And in a lot of cases, it's insurance. It's all those things. But anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there because there are a lot of people struggling. And it's easier to enter those fields than people think. And I just wanted to encourage people because there is work out there.
Jonathan just said in Facebook, there's about 6.4 million people in Tennessee. That's the other context you have to look at when considering the unemployment. Eric said, I listened to night one of the DNC convention. We're going to get to that in just a minute. He said in Biden's acceptance speech, it really felt like the biggest thing was our country was in ruin. Coronavirus is all Trump's fault. If you don't vote Biden, you're racist. And the Dem Party is the party of American values. George Floyd 1,000 times. It also felt like I was hearing that if Biden is voted in, the riots and protests will stop. It's exactly what I heard, too. Just what I heard. Want to know how you feel about it. He's getting us ready. Eric's getting us ready for the stories about to come here. Jonathan said, go look at the stock price of anything, particularly in the financial market. You'll see how good it was versus now. Kelly said, praying daily for our nation and our leaders with a little heart emoji. If you don't know Kelly, she's the undisputed champion of the emoji game. I'm telling you right now, anybody wants to test her clout, put it to her right now. I guarantee you she will win that thing. Nobody beats Kelly in the emoji game for sure. Kelly's an awesome person. Kelly's actually been on the program a couple times back in the day as well, too, on the AMF inside, I want to say. Let's see here. And there's one other. Oh, yeah. John Chandler on Facebook just said as well, to your point, Shine, not only is some of the construction stuff up, but he says floor sales are up as well. John Chandler here sells flooring materials.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's another trade. Flooring is a trade. And I love flooring guys. Good flooring guys can do a whole apartment building in 6 hours. You know what I mean? And like, that's another one where entry level. That's more entry level than plumbing or electrical. Not because it's like the easiest work ever, but it's hard to explain. It's because of how good the products are these days. They snap together and things like that. It's not like the way it used to be. That's another one where it's like you could have no experience and start making like between $13 and $17 an hour right off the bat. You know? Not working retail or something like that. And you're working during the day and getting to go home at night and hang out with your family. I mean, there may be some travel involved sometimes, but golly, I'm telling you, get in there, y'all. Don't starve. Work for trades.
Hey, switching topics somewhat here as we get into our national stories. RealNewsRadio.live. That's RealNewsRadio.live. Michael just said in Facebook a second ago, he said, in case you haven't heard about the blockchain-based voting system to prevent fraud, he actually put a link of Popular Mechanics in there, a blockchain voting system to prevent fraud. Now, that is a very, very interesting concept. And I hate to segue into our topic like this, Michael Stimpy, but you gave it to me too nicely here. Speaking of fraud, didn't do. Let's talk about our boy Steve Bannon real quick. Let's go through the story quickly. I just want to make sure people are aware, maybe get some opinions from the audience. Then we'll go straight into the not Donald Trump acceptance speech last night. If anyone doesn't know what I'm talking about, by the way, it is Joe Biden gave his acceptance speech last night. I layered that sarcasm, satire pretty thickly. I'm pretty sure people were picking up on it. But here's the Steve Bannon story. Coming from Axios, former Trump administration chief strategist Steve Bannon pled not guilty on Thursday after being indicted and taken into custody in New York on federal fraud charges. Now, very, very quickly, and we'll unpack this. Essentially what happened, Steve Bannon and 3 or 4 other guys, they started this crowdfunding thing entitled We Build the Wall. I'm sure you all heard of this. It was during that time period when there was Congress was going back and forth about whether or not they were actually going to give Trump funding for his wall. Trump had not actually secured defense spending budgets spending yet. And this idea about building the wall was still kind of up in the air. So Steve Bannon and his buddies sort of capitalized on that momentum and started this crowdfunding chain, this movement, this campaign, if you want to call it that, entitled We Build the Wall. So you go to this website, you donate $1, $5, or the Bernie Sanders $27 each, $27 my average. That's a good Bernie Sanders, right? You go there and
that
you
was
donate whatever
really
you're gonna
good.
do.
It's a lot better than your Obama, that's for sure.
Thanks, man. I'm getting better. I got an okay Clinton, but that's about it. So they got about $25 million is what they eventually raked in here. And as you would think this story is going to go over, a couple years or something like that, or not a couple years, over a couple months, Steve Bannon and his buddies ended up siphoning off couple $100,000 per individual from that $25 million. That's the TLDR version. Here's the latest update. Federal judge agreed to release Bannon on a $5 million bond. His travels will be restricted to New York, Washington, D.C. areas, and he will not be allowed to use his private jets or boats without permission. Now, Bannon, along with 3 of his other people, defrauded donors out of hundreds of thousands of dollars for their own profit using that crowdfunding site that we just talked about.
Yeah, but I heard the problem was, Grant, not that they took a salary, so to speak. It's that they told people that they wouldn't take a salary.
That's the exact problem.
Because this article is putting in so much about how much money they spend. A lot of people who run nonprofits buy boats and live in $1 million houses. Yeah. Lots of people. In fact, I'd say most of them. Most of the people who run nonprofits live a pretty nice life because, it's untaxed money. It's pretty great business to be in. The problem with these guys, or the original guy, not even Steve Bannon, the original guy who started it, is there's multiple tweets, interviews, YouTube videos that he did at the beginning and kept doing even up until late last year, saying, I will not take a dime. The board will not take a dime. Everything goes towards the wall.
Right.
And then enter Steve Bannon. Steve Bannon starts a separate nonprofit. They start running the money through there.
As their shell games go.
As the shell games go, they start running the money through there. You have to opt in to that nonprofit, which is going to be their defense, by the way. Mm-hmm. It's a different organization, and they're going to say, these donations, we're going to be going towards a salary towards somebody, blah, 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 blah. That's going to be the defense. But a lot of people are not surprised by it. I won't get into commentary, but I wanted to throw in that that's the issue. And boo on Axios for not covering that in the first 2 paragraphs, because that's why they're being indicted. It's not because they took a salary or bought boats, or a lot of people siphon off money to pay for things that aren't the things they solicit donations for. The problem is that they told their people that were donating, and they did by the millions, by the way, they weren't, or actually him specifically, the guy who started, and I can't remember his name, but he wasn't going to take a salary, and he ended up getting over $325,000 and bought a boat, paid off personal debts, bought a house, all these kind of things, travel expenses, all that stuff.
And let me prove Shine's point here, right? So the Axios reporting does not touch on that part of the story at all. They don't bring up any side.
Which is insane.
Right. And just to lend some credence to what Shine's saying, here is the first paragraph of the actual indictment, right? Here's the first paragraph of the court document that I'm looking at right now. I mean, you can look at it. It's linked in the show notes as well. On Axios actually links it as well. Here's the first paragraph of the actual court document. He goes on to name those individuals: Brian, Stephen, and Andrew, and Timothy. The defendants and others orchestrated a scheme to defraud hundreds of thousands of donors, including donors in the Southern District of New York. They marked the Southern District of New York for, I suppose, for jurisdiction's sake. Anyways, in connection with an online crowdfunding campaign, ultimately known as We Build the Wall. They raised more than $25 million to build the wall along the southern border of the United States to induce donors to donate to the campaign. These two individuals, each of whom, as detailed herein, exerted significant control over the We Build the Wall repeatedly and falsely. Now, this is the part, right? I mean, we're 3 sentences in to the actual court document. 3 sentences into the actual court document, here's what they say. Repeatedly and falsely assured the public that Brian would, quote, not take a penny in salary or compensation, and that 100% of the funds raised will be used in the execution of our mission and purpose. Because, as Bannon publicly stated, we're a volunteer organization. They go on to make their second point in the plea here that, quote, those representations were false. The fraudulent claim in this is that they made false representations to the people that were giving them money. I suppose what Sean's saying is accurate here. The fraud itself is not that you started
because they did build wall. It's not like they took money. Yeah,
the wall, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you can like Google Maps it. It's not like they took money, told people they're going to be. That's not the fraud. The fraud was, we're not going to take a salary. The board and the guy who started it, and I can't remember that guy's name. Bannon came in later, though. He's just the most high-profile, newsworthy person in the story, but he's really not the focus. Well, he's not the focus of this indictment. And I'll get into more commentary on like why Bannon is in the news and why this story, I think it's connected to other things. But I think the important thing, for newsworthy sake, like you guys need to know the who, what, where, when, why. The why here is because they said they weren't going to take a salary. But they're painting it like they stole a bunch of money from a nonprofit and told people they were going to do something. And this isn't an effort to defend, okay, Bannon. This is an effort to just tell you what happened. Because I've been annoyed by the news not reporting what happened. Like Axios there. And maybe they get to it by the end of the article. But it's so weird. They talk about how much money was taken. But like, golly, it's one of those things, again, where news writers are taking advantage of the fact that people just don't have specialized knowledge. They talk about regular things and act like it's the worst thing ever. The worst thing ever was the lie. Not how much money it was. And what's so sad, and maybe even like points to that there was actual corruption here, because corrupt people can be idiots at times, even if they can be idiot savants, is I think everybody who donated to build the wall would have been totally okay with the guy who started it taking a salary. If he had just said, hey, I know I said I was going to take a salary, but we didn't think it was going to be this successful. It's a lot of money. It's taking up all my time. And the board says I work really hard and that I deserve it. So I'm going to, as long as you guys are okay with it, I'm going to. And everyone would have been cool, right, I think. It's really sad. And it goes to show that, like, they were just they were grifters. This was actual right-wing grifting. And Trump supporters are the victims here.
They are. They absolutely are. And you're exactly right, because this is what they allegedly spent the money on. This guy, Brian, I keep calling him by the first name because, it's just what you do, but whatever. His last name is Kolfage. He specifically alleged that he used his share of the money for home renovations, payments towards a boat, a luxury SUV, a golf cart, jewelry, cosmetic surgery. I'd love to know what that cosmetic surgery was. I really would. Personal tax payments and credit card debt. They also allegedly used the money for a variety of personal expenses, including, among other things, travel, hotel, consumer goods, and as we just said, personal credit card debt. Sean's exactly right. This is a grifting scheme that was perpetrated against Trump supporters, because they capitalized in a vulnerable time in the motivation of a very large promise by President Trump to build the wall. They saw that it wasn't getting done because of a stall tactic by Congress to not fund it. So they said, well we're going to fund it ourselves then. Come on. And they exploited that situation, man. They really did. And I think Sean's right. If one of these people would come out and said, hey, we're going to take it, because I'm devoting so much of my time to this, we're going to take a salary from this, nobody would have cared. But if you're spending it on jewelry and personally cosmetic surgery and SUVs and a boat and, golf carts and come on, man. Nobody's going to get behind this. But this, whatever. Steve Bannon, his crew. It kind of rolls a little bit into the next topic we're going to talk about here at the bottom of the hour. Let me do this as well, in case anybody wants to. 615-807-0619. Sean, I'll throw that number up on the screen. I actually have the Google Voice number pulled up here today. 615-807-0619. That'll be the Real News call-in line. I'll go directly to my computer here. So when and if you call, it'll interrupt me. I'll have to get you online. We'll do the whole thing. But I want to know y'all's opinions. If you feel so bold to call in and let us know how you feel about what happened with the Joe Biden acceptance speech last night. And let me go through a couple things to set the stage with where we are.
Real quick, though, can we just stay on Bannon for just another second?
Oh, yeah. Sorry, buddy. Yeah, no problem.
I'm sorry. I was still sticking to the facts, but I have some opinion on the Bannon story.
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely.
So first thing I want to say is me specifically, but maybe even Real News as a whole, we were wrong about Steve Bannon in 2017. We viewed him as the liberty guy that was going to keep the Trump administration from being all rhino. That's what we thought. And you remember when the Bannon, Ivanka, Jared wars were going on in the first 6 months of the administration.
Factions, the neocons, the Bannonites, and the West Wing Democrats just all warring with each other.
So what we find out, after 3 years of context, is that Bannon was somewhat of the enemy, a little bit. Ivanka and Jared have been great for the administration, and I mean especially Jared. I mean, great for the administration. Better than Bannon could have ever been. I mean, Jared was the First Step Act. Jared was the this United Arab Emirates deal that just got done. So many of the great trade deals were Jared. And it was right in line where specifically why I voted for Trump was a lot of the stuff Jared's done to deal with international trade deals. I was wrong. I thought that was going to be Bannon. And I was so wrong. And I want to apologize to everybody who was listening to me back then. This particular thing shows me how wrong I was. This guy, Bannon, to me, it's kind of like a body of work now. It's not just this thing. It's everything I've experienced from Steve Bannon since 2017. Steve Bannon was just as bad as the rhinos. He was in there to take advantage of the fact that Trump was popular and make money, gain influence, do whatever the heck he was doing. Grifting. All those going around and doing speeches about how the elites, their time was over and that Trump was the recompense or whatever. He was just trying to be on the front end of a new paradigm and be one of the new lords. That's what he was trying to do. But he's one of these Goldman Sachs people. He's one of the financial people. Just bad news. And I remember, it's like people have been pointing out stuff over the past 48 hours about how he was telling the Washington Press back in 2016 when he was running the campaign, and even in 2017, I'm going to keep this guy in control. I understand this guy.
Like he's the shadow puppet, right?
And the problem is Jared Kushner and Ivanka. And Mike Flynn. He had a lot of tension with Mike Flynn. Mike Flynn went down and he did not. And then ultimately Bannon got forced out of there. But I think Bannon may have been a sleeper agent. The guy's former Navy intelligence. I think he may have been in there as a disruptor. I don't know. I think this may be connected to like Durham and the deep state stuff.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And I don't want to say anything more about it because I just don't know, because I'm right at the edge here of like my knowledge. I went from facts and now I'm into prognostication, right? Or speculation. Yeah. I think there'll be weird things come out of this case that are connected to his nonprofits, but
like totally unrelated to this story,
or seemingly unrelated. What I'm saying is like this story is not about Bannon; it's about the guy who started it, right? But Bannon's the focus. Why is Bannon in the focus? I don't think it was specifically because they did something wrong. In this, like, I know they did something wrong, but I don't think that's why they're getting indicted. I think it's catch a little fish to catch a bigger fish kind of thing. But I'll leave it at that. We'll see what happens. It could take a long time, obviously, because court stuff like this takes a long time with nonprofit stuff. It'll be after the end of the year before this court case is heard and figured out and finished. But anyway, I just wanted to get that in there before we moved over to Joe Biden.
Well, look, they did certainly make a spectacle about the way that they arrested him.
It's a spectacle. That's what I mean. There's something weird about it because it's not really about Bannon, but it seems like it's all about Bannon.
Well, listen to this part of the Axios reporting. They said Bannon was taken into custody aboard the Lady May. That's a 152-foot yacht. It's a $28 million yacht that he was taking. I mean, can you imagine that scene, Sean? We're literally talking Hollywood script stuff of, I don't know, like Wolf of Wall Street, where they pull up on the guy's $28 million yacht to bring him into custody in front of all of his boys, like a mob scene or something, right? You know what I mean? It said the vessel is reportedly owned by controversial Chinese billionaire. I'm going to butcher his name, but it's Gua Wenyu, whatever. A controversial Chinese billionaire. He says that this person is a critic of the Chinese Communist Party. He's been bankrolling Bannon's recent work. Quote, Bannon was arrested by inspectors from the U.S. Postal Service. All three of Bannon's cell phones are now disabled, according to Axios' Jonathan Swan. So he was arrested on a $28 million, 150-foot yacht that was owned by a controversial Chinese billionaire, dude. I just, like, that part of the story is very...
Yeah, see, Jonathan says in Facebook here, I'm quite confident if it's not a direct result of Durham, but very connected to the fact that Durham is doing an investigation. See, I think it's one of those things. I think it's a shot across the bow to the people funding and have been funding Bannon.
Yeah.
I think Bannon... That's what's so weird about that. But I don't want to say anything more about it because the prognostication can get weird. I'd rather wait for... just see what happens. But I think this is similar to the arrest of people in the FBI, similar to these professors that are getting arrested. I think this is all part of the same dragnet, so to speak. They're casting a wide net and they're finding interesting things. And I think this is one of those interesting things.
Hey, Teresa said in Facebook, yep, little fish catch the big ones when pressure is put on them. Yeah, that's exactly right. As Eric said in Facebook, intelligence officer plus nonprofits equals James Bond villain. Yeah, that's how it always goes, right? Then they strap James Bond to some machine that's going to cut him with a laser, and then he gets out inevitably. So, there's a great SNL skit, by the way, if you want to check it out from back in the 80s or something like that, where there's three Bond villains that are all sitting on a couch like a talk show, and they all just go through what they got wrong with James Bond. And to a T, every single one of them says, like, if you got him, just kill him immediately. Don't put him in some snare. Anyways, let's see here. Jonathan said, yeah, quite confident. We just talked about that. Bannon was the China guy. Hey, Sean, as we go into this next story here in the show notes, quick plug here. Anytime you want to follow along with what we're talking about in the show, in the description section of any video you're watching, that's YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, doesn't matter. You'll see a blue little Evernote link. If you click on that, it's quite literally verbatim what Sean and I are reading from and pulling from. And in those red italicized stuff, sometimes I'm actually quoting directly from the stuff I typed out the night before. And don't mark my grammar either. I do this stuff in there, put pregnant pauses in as I'm reading it. So it is what it is. Anyways. Sean, if you could follow along the show notes where it says the 2020 presidential election, Donald Trump versus not Donald Trump, and skip all the initial stuff there. Go down to the very last one that's also highlighted in yellow there. It says Biden accepts Democrat nomination, vows to end darkness. I feel like we should probably start there and then maybe backtrack.
Talk about over-promising. We spent half our time in darkness. He can't just get rid of darkness.
I mean,
it was dark last night. What's he going to do about that? Fix that, Joe Biden.
Street lights everywhere.
I've never heard a politician I'm going to get rid of darkness. I'm going to extend daylight by a few hours because you know what? You people deserve it.
Remember the Simpsons episode, man, where Mr. Burns just blots out the entire city? Joe Biden's just going to do a reverse version of that. Or instead of blocking out the sun, it's just a massive lamp that just light all the time. Anyways, go ahead and pull up that YouTube video, if you will. It's really just the first couple of minutes I want to focus on, honestly. And some of the other portions are, lays out some of his policy and yada, yada. But as Sean's pulling up that... Oh, you ready to go?
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Let's go ahead and play this from the very beginning, man. Just hit play on that. We'll give some commentary as we go through.
Good evening. Ella Baker a giant of the civil rights movement, left us with this wisdom: give people light, and they will find the way. Give people light. Those are words for our time. The current president has cloaked American darkness for much too long. Too much anger, too much fear, too much division. Here and now, I give you my word. If you entrust me with the presidency, I will draw on the best of us, not the worst. I will be an ally of the light, not the darkness. It's time for us, for we the people, to come together. And make no mistake, united we can and will overcome this season of darkness in America. We'll choose hope over fear, facts over fiction, fairness over privilege. I'm a proud Democrat, and I'll be proud to carry the banner of our party into the general election. So it's with great honor and humility I accept this nomination for President of the United States of America. But while I'll be a Democratic candidate, I will be an American president. I'll work hard for those who didn't support me, as hard for them as I did for those who did vote for me. That's the job of a president, to represent all of us, not just our base or our party. This is not a partisan moment. This must be an American moment. It's a moment that calls for hope and light and love, hope for our future, light to see our way forward, and love for one another. America isn't just a collection of clashing interests of red states or blue states. We're so much bigger than that. We're so much better than that. You know, nearly a century ago.
All right,
Franklin
you can pause
Roosevelt-
it there, Sean. I'll say this first and foremost. Okay, so they tell you in any oratory class that you take, whether it's in law school and you're talking about doing some type of appellate advocacy, or whether it's, I don't know, just general speeches, any great orator would also agree that typically human beings remember the first and last thing that you say, and whatever sandwiched in between, it's difficult for us to recall. So you always want to lead with your best argument. You always want to finalize by either recapping your best argument or at least finalize with something that's really going to bring him home. Even when it's not pure factual information that you're presenting. There's this idea called brain coupling. You can actually study this. There's a great neurobiologist that studied this, where they put a couple people in MRI machines, and they just, I don't know, they were scanning their brains while they were saying random words, and not that much activity was tracking. And then they say random numbers, and not that much activity was tracking. And then they would tell a story in 4 different languages. And you started seeing a little bit. And then all of a sudden, when they told the story in the same language that everyone spoke, you can quite literally on the MRI machine see brain waves that are coupling together. The power of narrative is so strong that it actually compels the listener. I mean, it's a type of Jedi force almost. You're quite literally compelled to listen. The brain chemistry does something. So even when you're telling stories in a speech to deliver factual information afterwards, they say you lead with your best story, they lead with the best narrative, and then you end with another story that couples it all together. This is why you see presidential candidates, even during State of the Union addresses, point people out in the audience. Anecdotal evidence doesn't prove anything factually, kind of, but it creates narratives that are almost impossible not to listen to. So when Joe Biden leads with something like he just led it, this message of unity and hope and stopping division, quelling violence, I absolutely loved it. I mean, it was. Without going too much on a limb here, it was oddly similar to the messages that we preach and pitch on Real News here every single day. I mean, taken out of in a pure vacuum, taken out of the context of it being Joe Biden within the DNC, just those words on paper, if I didn't know who was expressing them, I would totally agree with the sentiment behind them. Now, herein lies my frustration. I said before when we started this program, this morning, that is, I just don't think that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris necessarily align with what I've seen the majority Democrat Party trying to represent over the last few months. And I've seen a lot of my friends, Democrat or otherwise, that are now taking the stance that, not only we're not talking about quelling the violence necessarily. A lot of the conversations that I've been hearing taking place is somehow justifying that the violence is occurring. Somehow saying that if you're focusing more on the fact of property destruction, not that human beings or lives are being taken away, then it's your problem. That there's insurance to cover this stuff. That violence is justified because MLK, at the end of his life, after his assassination in 1968, those riots actually accomplished something on the back end. Now, it wasn't the 64 civil rights movement, but there's, some Title 10 changes in there. That's a whole different tangent we don't have time to get into. That violence can accomplish something. So if the narrative out there in the streets is that violence is not only worthy and justified, but it's actually one of the only things that causes people to listen and pay attention to right now, it doesn't exactly meld well. It's just not really a cohesive presentation from Joe Biden.
It makes what Joe Biden say unbelievable.
Yeah. Right. So I'm wondering.
Makes it seems like he's full of crap.
Which party is the party that I'm supposed to listen to? Is it sort of the mob out there that's trying to change things, what they see as a justified cause, that everyone has been sort of piggybacking, the entirety of the party has been piggybacking off this movement since it started? I mean, the entirety of the party has been piggybacking off this movement since it started. Not a single Democrat in elected office right now is willing to come out and openly disavow the violence that's going on.
It's because it's bigger than the party right now.
It is. Now, I go back to the top of the research here, Sean, at the national story section. Just yesterday, Drudge Report linked this USC news. This USC Dornsife launches 2020 election tracking poll. Biden leads by 11 points. Now the way Drudge pitched this, and Drudge, he's just a conglomerator of is that a word?
Aggregator.
He's an aggregator. Thank you. He's just an aggregator of news. It's just a center. It's like a Netflix for news, right? So you go there and just see headlines, but the headlines that you click on are not what the headlines are. He doesn't just copy and paste headlines. Matt Drudge goes in there and does his little Matt Drudge magic and then changes the title to put a little bit of a spin, a little bit of a bias, and he curates a very interesting presentation on the news. It's one of the most trafficked websites in the nation. Consistently every single day, every single year. And this headline, he put something to the effect 2 days ago where he said, the definitive presidential poll. So this is the one that's going to get it all. And you go through the first couple paragraphs and what they end up describing is what this poll is, why it's so, well researched, where it came from, the USC researchers that put this stuff together. And eventually, if you get down there to the third or fourth paragraph where it says results are based on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the fifth paragraph. The results are based on of this poll. Results are based on repeated participation of eligible voters in USC's Understanding America study. Results are based on repeated participation of eligible voters in USC's Understanding America study, a probability-based representative sample of U.S. households. Now, the researchers expect that more than 6,000 voters, which is a fairly decent sample size. I know it doesn't seem like much, but in the
That's
world
huge.
of putting...
It's huge, right? Actually. It's humongous. Yeah. Most polls are like less than 2,000 people, like most of the national polls. Like the ones that New York Times, MSNBC, CNN, it's like less than 2,000.
So get this part. I think if you want to be safe about your results, they say 1,500 is around the minimum you want to walk in there. But most polls are between 1,500 and 2,000, just like Sean said. So this USC poll, the researchers expect that more than 6,000 voters from their panel will respond to the poll every 2 weeks, with shifts in data reflecting changing opinions. Now, you can get into the intricacies of who these people are and whether it's leaning Democrat or independent Republican, but the rest of the story at least claims that they try to do as good of a job as possible as making it pretty fair across the board. I don't know if that's true, whatever. The next paragraph says the first full release of findings from the poll will be in late August, in which researchers will examine the impact of the pandemic on voters and take a look at differences between voting blocks in 2016 and 2020. An early peek in preliminary data among roughly 1,500 respondents who participated from August 11th to August 16th using the poll's signature probability method finds Democrat nominee Joe Biden holding an 11-point lead over President Trump. An 11-point lead over President Trump. But again, This poll will be very interesting to see. 6,000 voters polled every 2 weeks about their shifting opinions. I only bring this up because Matt Drudge is saying that this is going to be the definitive poll. A few years ago, New York Times was telling me that Hillary Clinton had a 97% chance of winning on the day of the election. We all saw how that turned out. And I want to juxtapose this entire thing with the speech that we just heard Joe Biden give a second ago. Shine, here's what I'm saying. I don't know which narrative to believe, man. It seems like the Biden-Kamala Harris ticket are so wildly out of touch with where the motivation in the Democrat Party is right now. I don't know how Biden could hold an 11-point lead over Trump if it were not primarily because of how I titled the program this morning. It's not Donald Trump. So everything that the streets are standing for right now, as far as it pertains to the Democrat Party, it seems like Joe Biden and Kamala Harris orchestrated the situation by which we have people marching against right now. If you don't know what I mean, we have the architect of civil asset forfeiture and in the exponential increase in mandatory minimums, Joe Biden, in the 90s under Clinton. We have Kamala Harris, who made her career off of prosecuting folks. Now, I know some are saying, well, that was the law at the time, but if you're going to tell me the prosecutors don't have at least some discretion in the way that they bring these charges, then I just can't agree with you on that. I can't. An overzealous prosecutor is a very real thing. And prosecutors do have some discretion in the charges they choose to bring or not to bring, or the pleas that they choose to plea out or not to plea out. Some discretion anyways, not overwhelming discretion, I'll give you that. But you have two people that just don't necessarily seem to represent what the party is right now. And I'm also seeing that he's leading by 11 points. So I don't know what to do with this. And honestly, Sean, I'm not even sure if this is even real commentary. I'm just expressing how I'm kind of confused right now. Because at the same time, go to the second story here. The Epoch Times is reporting that the DNC had a night of viewership that dropped by 22% compared to 2016. Now, that's even more odd because you would figure that everybody's going to be viewing this because nobody can show up in person. So at least whatever percentage of people that would have showed up in person are absolutely going to be watching it. So you would at least have to think that the numbers would be close to that, or I don't know. Granted, it was Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, so that was the that was the pinnacle of just ridiculous reality TV in America, right? So maybe that's what spurred a lot of people to watch. I don't know, but however you want to look at it, that statistic says to me a drop in 22% says it's like Democrats are not exactly on fire for Joe Biden. Look, Tulsi Gabbard was even coming out and speaking yesterday. That's the next headline we have here from Reason. Tulsi Gabbard now is coming out saying that she wasn't even asked to speak at the DNC. And the reason why that's a problem, it's not law that if you get at least some electoral college votes, or not electoral college votes. Why is that term blanking on?
Primary votes. Primary votes.
Thank you. Yeah. The standard has been if you get at least some primary votes, the DNC will invite you to be a speaker. Because the way the DNC should look at this, or the RNC, or any party, the way the party should look at this is, well, if at least some percentage of people cast their vote for this person, we should probably hear this person out. I mean, they are a member of the party after all, and they did garner at least enough of a vote of the people that their opinions matter too. So let's just bring them in. If you got any kind of votes at all, bring them in. We'll give you an opportunity to speak. I mean, look at the people they had. Look at the people they had on to speak. But
that's what you're trying to do when you're trying to be a big tent. When you're trying to get all the votes you can, when you actually think you're going to win. I do want to point out two elections I remember where the Republican Party didn't allow Ron Paul to speak, even though he got around 9% of the vote.
Right?
Were elections they lost. They lost with John McCain and Mitt Romney. Both times. He had to have separate events like across the street or in the same city because they wouldn't let him speak. And they lost. He was also an anti-war candidate, just like Tulsi.
But you know who they did have to speak, though, is former Governor John Kasich. And self-avowed never-Trumper John Kasich. Right? So they had that. They had that.
He's
guy
like the evil Mr. Rogers, you know?
That's awesome. Yeah, it's a little bit. They had John Kasich in to speak.
I hate you, Trump, but I do want to kill you. Love you. I'm from Ohio. Yeah.
So don't have Tulsi Gabbard in to speak because, the DNC may still be Hillary Clinton's party and they don't exactly get along, but do have John Kasich in to speak because he hates Trump. So the narrative I'm getting again is that, violence is unjustified. We need to return to decency. We need to return to civility. John Kasich's here because we hate Trump, but another person that actually represents some portion of this party, we don't want to have her in. So again, this is yet one more portion where I can say that the DNC has a clearly pre-constructed narrative that it seems like portions of their own party are not a part of. It's exactly what Shine just said. If you want to be open tent and all-inclusive and bring people in, by all means, have a Tulsi Gabbard in there. But as far as Tom Perez says, 2 summers ago, when we were still doing this thing on the AMFM side, I don't think there's such a thing as a Democrat pro-life movement anymore. They wrote that off the books. So this is not really the party of inclusivity anymore either. And don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that Joe Biden is so disconnected that we shouldn't move closer to some aspect of civility. And I'm not even saying that the right isn't also doing this. Now, I don't know how you think about this, but Shine, you're the one that sent this to me, man. Maybe this doesn't fit in my analysis right now, but I do want to bring it up at some point. That thing you sent me last night, it's in the show notes. It's underneath that Tulsi Gabbard story. It's outside the DNC
You would think I
convention,
would remember what I sent you last night. You would think that. You would think that, but I send Grant stuff all the time, so I don't know what you're talking about.
It's the vans that had a bunch of Joe Biden stuff on it. It's in the show notes underneath that same stuff we've been following along, underneath the Tulsi Gabbard story.
Oh, the outside the DNC convention.
Outside the DNC, yeah. Pull up that Twitter. Well, there's no audio necessarily needed, but just sort of show them what's been going on. And they tag at Trump students with this, so I guess Trump students were responsible for this stuff going on.
It's on screen; they can see it.
All right, so I don't know how y'all feel about this type of tactic, and I don't even know if I want to dive down this road yet, but I'll just say this much. This is apparently outside the DNC convention. You see the tweet right there. Right now, outside the DNC convention, great work.
The best one is Antifa for Biden. That is the best one. It's right at the beginning. Here, let me pull it back here so you can see it. Antifa for Biden. These are incredible. And, hey, Grant, this is what was going on at the DNC convention in 2016. In fact, it was far worse. There were 2 planes flying banners around saying lock her up above the DNC and at the RNC, if I remember correctly. But yeah, rioters and looters for Biden. Please don't make me vote for Joe Biden with the screaming no lady from the night of when Trump won. If you can't complete a sentence, vote Joe Biden.
Dude, these vans are expensive too. I mean,
oh, yeah.
Wildly expensive. Those screens cannot be cheap, man.
Creepy Joe sniffs women. Joe Biden's puppet, or Joe Biden's China's puppet. I mean, they're all kind of like, it's politics,
That's what I'm saying though, Sean. It's just politics, but it's also politics for now. Right, and this is
okay. Democrats did spend over a year trying to impeach Trump for absolute BS.
Valid, totally valid.
I mean, this is just trucks. No one is debating policy. In fact,
I get you
Joe
there.
Biden did not mention a single policy item in that speech. Not one time. And in fact, I think you'd be very hard pressed to count on 2 hands the number of times policies were mentioned at the entire DNC. The whole thing. So, this is political discourse. It's just Republicans are funnier than Democrats. They just are. True. They just are. It's like they flipped from the 80s and 90s. Democrats are the stuffy, I hate saying this, they're the stereotypical negative church lady that doesn't like anything that you do and wants you to stand up straight and have your shirt tucked in, quit chewing gum, don't look over there, don't do this, don't do that. They're the don't do this people. And Republicans are the, hey, just, as long as it ain't hurting anybody, let's do it, buddy.
Yeah.
We're the cool ones. We could do stuff like that. Democrats wouldn't even be able to make the graphic, let alone would they buy the buses and put them somewhere.
Jonathan said in Facebook there was just one attempt. There's been 4. He said there wasn't just one attempt, talking about the impeachment stuff, I suppose. And he's right. There wasn't just one attempt. There was 4. It was an ongoing relitigation of the 2016 election.
He's right. I mean, that's what I'm saying is like, dude, Democrats have done far worse than putting vans outside something.
No, you're right. You are. But I will say this much. Nobody watching this right now or seeing that go live or seeing it in person, nobody is going to think that this is going to do anything to convince someone that they are wrong for voting for Joe Biden. Nobody's going to walk out of that or see this tweet right now and think like, oh my goodness, Joe Biden sniffs hair. Well, I'm certainly not voting for him now. The purpose for this, the people that are doing this, the people that put this together, the people that funded this, nobody thought to themselves in a sense of old school classical rhetoric that I'm going to persuade someone to vote for my guy. The point I'm making is I believe this was purposely antagonistic. And that's not to say it's necessarily a bad thing. It's just not in the vein of trying to convince your fellow man that you're correct. I think as a logical preposition, we can all agree on at least that fact. And that's what I'm saying is I think this is the level of discourse that both sides are at right now. I'll pull back again to Trump's comments from yesterday, when he said boycott Goodyear because that's the same game the left is playing. I think we're all on both sides sort of openly accepting this idea that we need to play the same game as the other side is playing. Now, we hate it that they would do it to us, but we're going to do it back to them because that's just the rules of the game right now. Yet I fall back on the terrible old adage of if 2 wrongs don't make a right and blah, 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 blah. Now, if that adage has any sense of truth to it at all, what I'm asking at this point is then who, what, where, which industry, which organization at this point has enough moral credibility left to make the claims that Joe Biden made to start his speech with? Everybody, I would venture to say, Democrat, Republican, Green Party, Libertarian, Independent, I would think everybody would wholeheartedly agree with the words that Joe Biden spoke. They just don't like that Joe Biden was the one that was speaking them because he's lying. It's not truthful. My frustration is when I see something like this too, I don't know who on our side then can make that same claim either. And the more that we play these same games back and forth with each other, the less and less we have an ability for any single human being to step up and say, it's all nonsense, y'all. It's just all of it's kind of trash worthy. Right? And I get it. All these things are true. All these things about Joe Biden are true, but the purpose is not to convince a Joe Biden voter. It's to piss him off. And it does. It's awesome. It's super funny.
It's even more. It's more specific than that. It's to own the libs, Grant.
It is. It's
to own the libs. And let me give you another example. Did you see Donald Trump, the campaign, buy out the internet this week, including the front page of the Washington Post? You didn't hear about this?
No.
See, okay, so everybody be a little bit patient. I'm going to share my screen with Grant. You guys won't be able to see it, but Grant will be able to see it. Let's see, screen 1. Okay, so Grant's looking at that's what the front page of the Washington Post looked like. Do you see that? Okay.
Wow. Okay.
So Grant can see that. Now I'll show the audience. Hold on. There we go. So, do you think anybody, audience and Grant, do you think anybody who reads the Washington Post is going to magically change to be a Trump voter? I mean, it says up there, you can see it it said democracy dies in darkness. And then all over the Washington Post, it had, like, now that Kamala Harris is the VP, now you want to vote for Trump, right? And it all links to videos and things like that. It wasn't about getting voters. It's about owning the libs. It's about putting Trump's face and Trump ads and Trump pins logos all over their online space. Just like these students put anti-Biden messages all over the parking lot at the DNC. It was about overwhelming their own spaces during one of the most important weeks of the political season, showing the American people that even with their organization, this is supposed to be the biggest week of the political season for them, they don't have control over their own spaces. They don't have the mental acumen to do it. They don't have the intelligence, nor do they have the financial resources. And I don't know if you also saw, Trump bought out the top banner on YouTube. It's the most expensive ad on the internet.
Yeah.
And he did it during the week of the DNC.
Yeah.
Why did someone at the DNC
see Trump first and Biden
they were
second,
the ones
right?
who knew when they were going to have their convention before anybody else?
Yeah.
Before they announced it, why didn't they buy the ad space at the top of YouTube? Oh, no. They spent $250 million or $260 million on television ads. This is how smart the Biden people are. While Trump's spending hundreds of millions on internet stuff, Biden's spending hundreds of millions on television ads and spending $60 million on internet ads. This, to me, was showing rich people and grassroots people like you and myself how much more organized the Trump campaign is than the Democratic National Convention and the Joe Biden campaign. So that's kind of pulling back 30,000 feet. I know you're kind of in the looking right up at it, and that's it's some good commentary. And I'm not trying to disprove what you're saying. We do need better discourse. We do need a more mature discourse, but we are where we are, and we're less than 90 days from the election. And we're at the convention. The conversation is what it is. It'll be the next president and the president after that and the president after that that helps us shape our discourse. But I think we're moving into a tougher world than we've been in, and talking about hugs and hope and candy canes doesn't really resonate with people because there aren't going to be a lot of hugs and candy canes. We might need some hope because hope can sustain us in dark times. But I think dark times are ahead, and we need someone who can face them with vigor. Not someone who stumbles through sentences.
Yeah. No, that's a great pitch. That absolutely is. Because I completely agree. I do think we're coming into a pressing moment. I don't know when, but sometime in the near future. And I think it's going to take strong leadership. And I don't know, I would advocate, this is going to sound very strange, but I would advocate for strong leadership, hopefully outside of government, right? I mean, Trump's not going to be around forever, clearly. I think the best shot he has at changing the American landscape is he might be the first president in U.S. history to replace 5 Supreme Court justices as if he wins again. And that's the true lasting legacy of a president as far as I'm concerned, because everything has been shoved through the Supreme Court over the last 40 years almost. I mean, every major societal change we've had, I mean, think about this in your mind. Everything from Obamacare, gay marriage, abortion, any major monumental, aside from the 64 Civil Rights Act, any monumental change that we've had in American society for the past 30 or 40 years has come through the Supreme Court just telling us what should and should not be. We don't have a legislature anymore. We just don't. So the true lasting legacy of a presidency is arguably the Supreme Court justices that he picks. And Trump has an opportunity possibly to pick 5 of them. And I do mean over 8 years, 5. And that's, again, going off the idea of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Alito, and Thomas stepping down in the next 4 years.
Thomas is definitely going to step down soon.
Ginsburg, I mean, man, right?
She won't step down. She'll go to the hospital and step down there or something.
Well,
But Thomas may actually retire. I don't think Ginsburg will actually retire. I think she'll die on the bench is what I'm saying. Not on the bench, but as a member of the court. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Which good for her for being a dedicated public servant. I don't agree with everything that she's been into, but good for her.
Yeah, man. Yeah, absolutely.
I'm not that dedicated to being a public servant. I can tell you that right now. She's beating me out on that.
And look, as we're into the program here this morning, 10:08 in the morning, we're on our way out. I know where we are right now. And I know this is a program that tends to lean more libertarian and more conservative. And look, my opinions are strictly that, just my opinions. They don't reflect on where Shine stands. They don't even really reflect on the rest of the Real News audience or the people that do this program. I just was feeling this morning, after some of the words I've been hearing this week and after everything else, I just, all this stuff can start small, right? All this stuff can start with just conversations where even if you're thinking to yourself, I wish I wouldn't have said that, or I wish I would have said this instead, or if there's some point you're having a political disagreement with your friend going forward, I would just advocate choose the route of compassion, kindness, and love in a sincere manner. Don't just say it because you're trying to win an election, right? If enough of us do that at a small enough level, a collective consciousness of 300 plus million Americans doing that, it won't matter who's president then. We'll just do it for ourselves, right? 10:09 now in the morning. Real News is signing off for today. We will be back on Monday. Doing it big. We love each and every one of y'all for real. See ya.
Happy birthday. birthday, Kel. I just saw that. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Kel.